You have to know that things like this start just from one thing, which is a dream. My dream was that all students could be able to develop projects in our university. Here we want to establish something which is way bigger. I would say a company, more or less. But for doing this, we need all of you.
Space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our new webinar. My name is Nicola, and I will be your host for today. I'm proud to have the honor of introducing our two special guests, Jack Madley and Tom Kelly. Jack and Tom are co-founders of EVONA, a space recruitment company based in Bristol, England. We decided to develop this webinar with them because we believe their approach to recruitment is game-changing, and you will understand why in a couple of minutes. Jack and Tom combined have an extraordinary amount of experience in the business field and especially in the human resources sector. By the end of this webinar, you will have a much clearer view about how does recruitment work and what can you do to get the best out of your qualities and expand your career possibilities. As usual, feel free to ask questions in the chat and we will do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation. And I don't want to steal any more time, so I'll just give the floor to them. So good afternoon, Jack, and good afternoon, Tom, and welcome.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting us. I love the intro as well, very inspiring. There's a really good intro to the panel, actually. So yeah, a bit about ourselves. So me and Tom have been working together for a number of years now. We've both got 10+ years experience in recruitment in STEM subjects specifically. So that's our background, and we started EVONA nearly 3 years ago now, but specifically to find and source candidates for the space market. So.
Absolutely. We prepared a presentation to run through today to give people a bit more of an understanding of us as a business. You know, we've not been in business for too long, but we set up something for ourselves. And the idea is that we want to help to kind of inspire people to realize that you can enter the space industry. There's lots of different routes in, and give some really strong advice on how to actually kind of make yourself ready to enter the space industry. So without further ado, so welcome to the presentation. So a bit about who we are. So as was just mentioned, we set up our business about 3 years ago now, actually, and we set it up with a real purpose because we worked for a very large recruitment organization before, and we felt like our skills could really be put to use, and that's why we set up a recruiting company specifically for the space industry, because we genuinely feel that the space industry has the opportunity to right a lot of wrongs that we've had here on Earth, especially around people kind of being biased towards hiring certain people. And we wanted to utilize the space sector as a very exciting area to really inspire all different sorts of people to enter. So people from every single kind of area that you could imagine: a fashion student, a pharma student, aerospace, of course. And the whole idea of the business is for us to evolve people. So that's what the name is. And what we've found is that we've become pretty much the leader within recruitment for the space sector. We serve markets all around the world. So everything from Europe to the US to Singapore. And we are involved a lot with new space. So working on some very, very cool projects, helping companies to really scale, but also helping companies to really understand what students are looking for, how students are looking to enter into the market. And we see EVONA really as kind of being the core part of all of the growth that will certainly be happening within the sector.
Thanks, Tom. I think that we want to be as transparent as possible and be really honest and just say, look, there is a lot of opportunity within the space market. It's been disrupted ultimately in the last few years. I think previously it was very much government-led. Now we've seen the rise of the new space market and commercialization and privatization, which has allowed so many new businesses, new exciting, agile startup companies to enter the space sector and really offer something different. And like Tom says, we're seeing that a lot of these companies now are offering solutions for almost everything we're doing in daily life. The applications are so wide, but it's an extremely exciting time. But there are a few things to just be aware of and just understand the issues, just so we can understand how we can how to position yourselves in the best way to actually enter a career in the space sector. So I touched upon it just then. New space specifically is pretty much run by startup organizations. We typically, I think say 90% of the companies we work with would be classed as new space, as opposed to the older organizations which you may know of, the primes such as Airbus Defence and Space, Thales Alenia Space, for example, OHB. We do have had interaction with those types of businesses, but we primarily work with new space companies, and typically they're no more than 3 to 5 years old. So I think in terms of that, first thing to be aware of is that these smaller companies, they don't have graduate programs. They're typically not at graduate fairs. They're typically not doing making themselves visible in the marketplace. However, there are lots of them, and they're very exciting organizations. So unfortunately, they're a little bit less visible than the bigger corporations, but we'll teach you some ways of actually digging out these companies and starting to network and open up yourselves to opportunities within those businesses. Competition is fierce. Ultimately, it is hard finding a new job opportunity and finding something that's right for you and getting yourself out there. But again, we can go through some factors a little bit later on in this presentation in terms of how we can make you stand out as individuals. And knowing where to look for help is a big part of that. We're a big driver for EVONA is that we are having a real push now over the next 24 months on a platform for students. So it's kind of one of these watch this space things. We'll talk about it a little bit later as well. But we're trying to up our game in terms of what we do in terms of helping people enter the space sector. But there are other things you can do. We've never had access to as much information as we do now in this day and age. Different platforms from social media to business media. So it's understanding how you can utilize those different platforms to really get yourself out there. And then the other piece is the need for experience. You will often see that companies ask for a certain level of experience, and you can sometimes question, how do you actually get your foot in the door? How do you really kickstart your career? But again, we can touch on ways of other things outside of hands-on experience. If you're lacking that particular area, what can make you stand out in the space industry, and why companies will want to hire you?
Okay, thanks, Jack. So the good news. So if you understand what the space industry is, my family, my friends, they still don't understand. I'm sure many people listening here, when they say to some of their friends and family that they want to work in the space industry, the answer is often, "Oh, really? Okay, what? So you're going to be a astronaut, are you?" The amount of times I've heard that, it is unbelievable. However, look, space is coming into the mainstream now. Elon Musk is obviously changing a lot of the perception. He can be very, he's certainly an interesting guy. But what we're going to see now is that the space industry really is going to float into mainstream media, purely into the mainstream. So it's a great time to be alive if you understand what the space industry is. It's a great time to be alive regardless of your area of study. There's obviously some areas which are kind of more straightforward to enter the sector, such as aerospace engineering, mechanical, thermal, structural, these sorts of areas. And just to kind of touch on something to reflect on this, which I didn't mention at the start actually, is that the way that our business is structured is that we have account managers who work with different space companies around the world. These space companies say, look, we are looking to hire. Can you help us, please? Because we've tried to hire ourselves, but there's lots of other businesses that are looking to hire the same skill sets. And we then have a team of consultants, and the consultants mirror the space industry. So one consultant specifically recruits for embedded software, another one for mechanical, another one for thermal, another one for structural, another one for hardware, electrical, and then project managers, program managers. And this is kind of mirrored for upstream space, which if most people here are kind of aerospace, that's probably your natural area of understanding of the space industry. But where a lot of the growth is actually on the downstream side of space as well. So a lot of the applications that are coming from space. And that really is open to fairly normal kind of skill sets, really. We're talking about things like data science, web design, pretty much everything that you can think of. So the good news is that you guys are interested in looking at a sector that is booming, and it's a sector that still many people haven't quite understood yet. So the fact that you're considering it now is a very, very, very amazing thing. So yeah, some facts here. The Bank of America expect the space market to triple in size. So we see this as actually quite conservative because in reality, there's going to be so much more than just this. It really is going to become everything that you're involved with will involve some element of space. The other major point, 68% of UK space sector organisations expect to grow, and we've actually done some recent research and looking into Europe and the US, the figure is actually slightly more than that. So we really are looking at a sector here where pretty much the majority of businesses are looking to hire. And we've obviously had a very interesting previous 12 months for obvious reasons, and where a lot of sectors have really struggled and there's not been too much growth. We've seen actually over the last 12 months the sector has just continued just to grow, and our friends and our partners within the investment organizations who control a lot of the funding into the space companies were expecting a downturn, and actually what they've seen is a continued upturn. So it's a great time to be alive within this sector. And furthermore, for the people listening to this, the great thing is that there is a major shortage of skills, especially within STEM. And there's a number of reasons for that, and we are trying to address these reasons. And STEM is very cool and very interesting, and that needs to be taken to the masses. And soon enough, you guys within your skills here, providing that you can shape and you can be smart about your approach into the sector, you're going to have a very, very, very nice career because there's so much opportunity. It is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, so we're going to move into now about some tips and what to do in terms of actually how do you actually enter the sector. Tom's touched on some good stuff there. We know the industry's booming. We know there's lots of job opportunity, but again, when I look back when I was a student, I found it personally frustrating because it wasn't always clear how you actually go and identify these opportunities. So I think there's a few points here. We'll start up on the left and move our way up in terms of different tips that we've got in terms of how you can start uncovering the opportunities within the space sector. I think the first thing is what you should do when you set out to achieve anything is set your objectives. What is it that you actually want to achieve? What do you think is your passion? What do you think is where you can truly add value? What will you be motivated by? And I think that's a very good place to start when you're actually setting your objectives and what you want to achieve. Finding the right people to talk to, people like us. There's other institutions, other organisations. You've joined a platform today, or PoliSpace today, to go about this information. So there's nothing wrong with just going far and wide in terms of connecting with the different people that are involved in the space sector, and just going, just trying to get that as much exposure as possible. So that will be a task in itself, but it's definitely worth doing, and try to think outside the box as well. It's not just your typical places. It could be online platforms, could be social media platforms. Most big companies, etc., have got presence on these platforms now as well. So there's a number of different places you can go. This is the next point. Consider your brand and your direction. I think this is something that me and Tom and the two other co-founders, we talk about a lot whenever we're talking to students. The brand and the journey, your personal brand and who you are at this point in your career is probably your greatest asset. You're at a point where you don't have potentially any hands-on experience or commercial experience, or you haven't actually had an actual job yet, but that's not a problem, because people will, when you're applying for jobs, people will understand that this is your first opportunity. But what you can really draw on is, like I said, what you are as a person, where you can really add value, what your passion is, what your competencies are, and ultimately, in terms of where you should start, and when you're looking at setting your objectives, your personal branding and the journey you've been on, who you are now, and what you can add value to in an organization, that's going to be your strongest asset. So being clear around that, doing a bit of soul searching and being clear, think about exactly what you want to achieve and where you can add value. That's something that's huge, and you almost want to portray that through your CV, your resume, through your profiles on different platforms. If you can get that across, that is the big thing. What is going to set you apart from other people, and ultimately only you can be. It's only you that can be you ultimately at the end of the day. So present that in the best way possible. Network. We talk about this a lot. Again, multiple platforms. There's lots out there. LinkedIn is huge now. It's a beast unto itself, really, in terms of the opportunities and doors that it can open. And it is just a case of, again, building that profile, spending time, connecting with people. This is one of the easiest ways, actually, in terms of actually discovering these new space companies. Most new space companies have themselves on LinkedIn. The people that work there have profiles there. So it's a really good place to start in terms of discovering companies out there that will need talent and need people like yourselves. So starting to build your network, starting to build the people that you're connected with on various different platforms, that is key. And it's just a case of not stopping, to be honest. There's never going to be a point where you can have too many connections. It's only going to open more doors for you over time. It's something that we rely on for our business as well. We connect with people daily, helps us build our business, and also helps us hire when we're looking for people. But there's this case of actually nurturing those relationships. Then, if you've got an opportunity where you've had an introduction to someone, or you've connected with somebody, it's about actually how can you nurture this. Is there an opportunity to meet with them at an event? Is there an opportunity to listen to a talk that they're doing? And then you can reference moving forwards. Is it something that you can then join, and then you can build onto your profile, add onto your resume, after that add onto your CV? So in terms of actually nurturing the connections you do have, it's only going to go help to increase an opportunity. If someone is looking, you've got your profile sorted, you've got a bit of an in with those individuals already, then it could open a door up to an opportunity, a job opportunity with these people. Resilience is key. I think it is, unfortunately, we'd love to sit here and say that if you do all these things, you will definitely get a job. There is a good chance you'll get a job, but there will be pushbacks. There will be times where your application isn't successful, but never let that get in your way. I would always see where you've maybe been denied an opportunity or an application has been declined. It's an opportunity for learning. What could you have done differently next time? Feedback is a gift as well. If you can get feedback on why maybe something hasn't gone your way for a certain time, always ask for feedback. People will generally give it to you. And again, then that helps you maybe increase your profile. Maybe you think about redoing your CV in a different way, but that resilience is a big part of that. So yeah, don't be put off by any negative or steps backwards in the journey. It all helps build in the long run to actually open some doors in the future and improve you as a person. And going back to this profile piece, that just being you, that experience piece, don't let inexperience prevent your application. Just give it a go. Apply. If people will appreciate that you are a recent graduate, or you may only have a short amount of experience. What they'll want to see at that point is what else you can bring to the table. What were you involved in at university? Were you involved in extracurricular activities? Were you part of PoliSpace? Were you part of driving projects forwards? Whatever it may be. Have you done any project work? Did you play sport? Were you part of any groups? There's lots of other things that you can draw on, that when you go into a working environment, that experience is actually fundamental to doing a very good job. Yes, people want people who are technically capable and someone can actually do the job, but the competencies that an individual has are becoming more and more important. When me and Tom are speaking to companies on a daily basis, it's the softer skills and the other stuff which becomes incredibly important to an organization and what they want to see in individuals who are joining a company. It's teamwork, the ability to work on an individual basis as well and be self-motivating. All those things are things you can develop yourself and you can work on alongside the theory side that you may have learned in your degree. So there's all those things you can draw on that will actually build your profile up to giving you a good opportunity into an opportunity when an opportunity presents itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think just to recap on that as well, it is now, so I'd say maybe 2 years ago, lots of the businesses were just saying, we're looking for these skills. So mechanical design with this CAD, as an example. Now 100% of the businesses are saying, yeah, we're looking for that, but what's more important to us is somebody that's passionate, somebody that cares, somebody that's here for the right reason, somebody that has initiative, somebody that can pick up different tasks. And I think just kind of moving into this next sort of section here, it's so important that you can put this across. Space is like, we can tell you from I've been recruiting in the space sector now for about 6 years, and like every single day that is talking to either candidates or businesses that are looking to hire, and people in the space industry, there is a culture there which is very passionate. People really care. People are very humble. I'm not sure whether it's because we're constantly looking at things which don't exist on this planet, which kind of makes you quite humble when you are on this planet. But it's that you have to be able to show these businesses that you can communicate on that sort of level, and that this is a real passion of yours. And simply stating what you do from a technical perspective, unfortunately these days, is just not enough. What we really need to be looking at is people having a real think about, like, who are you as a person? Why are you here? How have you come into a situation where you're looking for a job in the space industry, and why is it so important to you? And I think that, even 2 years ago wasn't as important. Now it is everything. Like we can say that's 100%. So I think, I guess the first sort of place to start with this is that you really do need to kind of, picture yourself in a situation where you're looking through hundreds of applications, and yours is one that within a few sentences needs to be like, wow, I'm really intrigued by this, or wow, I'm really interested. And the best way to do that is to put your personality across, talk about your journey, talk about what's important to you. With that said, we always recommend to try to keep things kind of simple and concise. If you're anything like me, then if I were to talk about myself, I would be there for the whole day. So it's about just trying to make it as concise and simple, but also just something that really is, it seems important when you read it, and they can tell that this is actually, it's more than just a job for you. If you wanted just a job, then you should go and work in the finance sector, or you should go work in a different sector, which is potentially, a bit more straightforward. But this is a very passionate area, and everybody's extremely passionate about what they do. So yeah, for me, the simple and concise and to kind of get the attention is very, very, very important. I think, as Jack said, right at the start of the last slide, is about setting your objectives, knowing what you want to achieve. In work, but also as a person. People now are looking to hire people, not just the skill set. So I think in terms of starting with your mission statement, that is extremely important to put that across. And those top three areas, simple and concise, to be able to get the attention, and start with the mission statement. Those three do kind of come together. And I think that is something you need to read over and over and over again, and run it past your friends, run it past your family, and just get it down to a point where they read it and they're like, wow, that's like, that's really impressive. And then I'll just kind of hand over now. Would you like to run through a few of the others here, Jack?
Yeah. I think in terms of this, just picking up from my last slide there, we appreciate, and companies will appreciate, that you won't have vast amount of commercial experience. But it's the other pieces that we've put there, include volunteer positions, anything you've done which would be classed as in addition to your general studies, in addition to your degree, maybe even stuff that you've done at school or projects outside of work or whatever it may be. If you can draw on that, which again highlights competencies around such as team working, working together to achieve a common goal, anything around that, organizational skills, communication skills, that kind of stuff is definitely worth picking up on, even if it's not in a commercial environment or a business environment. It's still highlighting your competencies as an individual. And that is another one there. First, focus on your personal experience. There's nothing wrong with putting a personal touch into your profile, into your CV, because then again, like Tom says, when you've ultimately got a business that might have, say, 10 or 20 applicants for the same role, what is, to start with, you've got an opportunity to get across what you like on paper. So it's like, how is that going to be grabbed? If there's a personal touch in there, they're immediately going to get a feel for who you are as an individual, rather than just this robotic approach. That links back to the mission statement as well. As like, what are you passionate about? Is it something that maybe you're passionate about being involved in projects that ultimately end up on Mars? If that's your passion, get it across in the statement. I'm living to be involved in these projects that ultimately create a base on Mars, whatever it may be. There's nothing wrong with putting that in there. It's powerful. It grabs the attention. Attention to detail is that we don't want to teach you to suck eggs as such, but proofread things, go through them, make sure there's no mistakes, etc. Because again, it's just that snapshot of you getting the best impression of yourself, and you don't want to let yourself down by misspelling or structural formatting issues in your CV. And then the big thing is honesty as well. People will respect honesty. I think we'll go into the next slide, which is around interviewing. But some people feel like they may have to use a bit of artistic license or expand to a certain extent, which may not be true around some of the experience they've had. Is people would rather you be honest. Again, going back to what we hear from the companies that we deal with day in, day out. If someone hasn't got skills in a certain area, you can be honest and say, look, I haven't maybe got all the experience you're looking for. However, what I can bring to the table is that I learn very quickly. I'll put extra hours in. I've had experience before. I can give you examples of where I didn't have skills in the past, and I put myself into a position where I did learn very quickly. If you're able to kind of get that across, that they will love that. It's actually better than sitting there as a tick spot saying you can do something. The honesty bit is massive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that last point there is really important. These businesses are looking for people who are open to new ideas, who can be shown new things and will take the time to understand them and learn. And that really is a skill that most people have. However, most people don't kind of really mention it. So yeah, that's something to really, really, really make sure that you push forward. And we've actually put together a workbook, which is available for people to have a look at after this. There should be a link available, and that really kind of brings a lot of this to life. It provides a lot more information, and it will also give you access to internships, where to look for jobs. We've tried to put on there as much information as we possibly can based on our experience. But yeah, moving on to interview tips. I think first and foremost, the most important thing to consider when you're looking to interview is to understand what the job is. I know that sounds really obvious, but the tip that I'm just about to give is something that we say to CEOs who are looking to place into jobs. For any layer of individual, the most important thing is to think about how you can answer questions with examples. So to kind of give you an example of this, when you go into an interview, mechanical seems to be something that's in my head today. But if they were to ask you what mechanical design software have you used, your average person in an interview will say, I've used this software, because that's the answer to the question, right? So, okay, yes, that should be a tick. However, if you're preparing properly for an interview, you should be going through the job specification and writing down as many small points of examples of where you've done things that are relevant to each part of the job spec. And on there, of course, if it is a mechanical job, will be use of mechanical design software. And you might put in there different examples of the various ones that you've used. But the best thing to do is to list, here's the CAD, here's where I used it, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, here's how it could be improved. And what you'll find, and again, this is relevant to CEOs, to project managers, to engineering managers, to any level of person, and like it's so important, is that when you're in the interview, you're prepared enough to be able to answer questions with examples. So using what I've just said, a good answer would be, so from a mechanical design perspective, I've used this piece of software. I actually used it on this project. Here's what I like about it. Here's what I might improve. And that, if you think about it, is such a better answer. And it ticks a lot of boxes. It shows that you're passionate. It shows that you know a lot about that particular area. It shows that you've done your research. It shows that you're thorough. It shows that you care. It's a really, really, really important tip that we say to everybody. And in all honesty, the interviews that go well typically are the people that have actually implemented this. And it kind of is an overall tip, really, in terms of how to really interview well. So just hand over to you for some more points around this, Jack.
Yeah, I think another trap that some people fall into, this is for CVs and interviews, is stating if they were part of something or involved in an experience or a project, is what everyone as a collective achieved, which is not a problem, because it shows teamwork, as we discussed, and working in a team is exactly what's needed within any organization to be a team player. But at an interview stage and a CV review stage, the interviewer will want to know what your contribution was to any part of that experience that you've got. So if it is part of a job that you've done before, or a university project where maybe you're in a team of 5 individuals, if it was a success, what was your individual contribution to make that a success? That is what you want to be highlighting. Again, I think in terms of feedback, and this is in reality, this is the feedback we get from the companies after interviews when candidates have gone through. The candidates that sometimes haven't done the best ways, where they were talking about, I was part of this team, this is what this team achieved. It's like, okay, that you haven't been able to expand on. The good thing would be able to say is, like, the team achieved this, we hit our objectives. This was actually because of my contribution around this particular area, which allowed us to hit that milestone. So it's focusing on what you actually contributed to the overall objective. And if you can focus on that, then you're ticking the box of saying, look, I'm an individual contributor and a team player as well. So focus on what your tasks were, where you added value, and then the interview can actually get an understanding of how you can add value in their environment. So that's a big point to be aware of. Again, for your CV, highlight the bits that you actually contributed to those particular projects or courses or whatever it may be, and then carry that through into the interview. We've put there as well, utilize your CV as a springboard. Whenever you go to an interview situation, have a portfolio or case studies that you can refer to. If you're interviewing for something more technical, if you've got anything to back up your technical ability, have that together, but also know your CV, because you can almost guarantee the interviewer will have a copy of your CV in front of them, and they probably will quiz you on certain aspects of what you've put there. So if you can elaborate on that, and you've got case studies, as I say, and I can go into it in more depth, and you just know it inside out, again, you come across as credible, and that you know what you can really add in those situations. So again, that's really good to know. Going in there not knowing what's on your CV or not being fully prepared, again, doesn't make you come across in the best way. And then look, play to your strengths. As I say, it's not necessarily about how much commercial experience you've got. It's about what you can bring to the table. And can you bring something to the table that's different to anybody else out there? So play to your strengths as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the final point on this, it's something that kind of seems obvious, but a lot of people tend to not do it actually, which is to really research the business and the person that you'll actually be speaking to. Now, we're not saying to be a stalker. Like I wouldn't go too far with it, but in the same breath, we are saying you do kind of need to be a stalker, because you want to be finding information out about the person that you're going to be speaking to, because there's so many examples where we've asked people to do this and they've looked at the interviewer on LinkedIn, they've maybe had a look on social media, and straight away you can start to see maybe if this person, if you've crossed paths before, did they go to the same university as you? Is their degree the same as yours? Have they got the same interests? Maybe they love to dance. Maybe you love to dance. Who knows? So by researching the interviewer before, you will feel more comfortable as you go into the interview. But in addition to that, it just shows that you care, and it shows that you've done your research, and it shows that it's something that you are really interested in. And like I say, I wouldn't take it too far, of course, but just having an understanding of that person is, we would always say that's a very, very good idea. And obviously make notes on the business. The best place for this, we find, is to look at the news. Be up to speed on the projects that they're in and what they're doing and what the latest news is with the business, and maybe start the interview with saying, look, first of all, I'd just like to say well done on the new, whatever it might be, something that you've seen in the news. Perhaps they've won a new project. Just be like, look, amazing to see that you won this new project. Perfect start for an interview. It's like it shows that you care, it shows that you're interested, it shows that you have the emotional intelligence to know that that's the right thing to say at that time, and it just makes you stand out. So kind of some basic stuff there, and again, in the pack, there's a lot more information around this. Talking of which, so this is the pack. So we've kind of put this together over the last few years, and it's pretty much summarizes what we've just explained there. In terms of our recruiting, we tend to recruit for vacancies that are really quite senior. However, we sometimes recruit for PhDs, but what we've found is that the interviewing for those level of people, what we want to do is we want to just give you the insight in terms of what does the perfect person look like when they go in for an interview, and just kind of pass on where we've seen people maybe do it badly. We've also seen people who have been amazing at it, and hopefully the workbook, feel free just to have a look at it. It's free, and if that's of use, then that would be amazing.
Just before we go to the Q&A stage of this, I think something that we haven't touched on, but I think this is really important, something I'm pretty passionate about in terms of sharing some advice on, is around being open to different opportunities. I think, again, some people can maybe put themselves at a disadvantage if almost at the very start of your career to be too focused sometimes in terms of what job opportunity you want, or what would be the ideal job for you. For example, you're really gunning to be a propulsion engineer. You could just look at purely propulsion jobs and just be really almost blinkered to the point that there may be some, say, systems engineers opportunities out there, which may be a good springboard into a propulsion job later on. So I would say it's definitely great having those objectives and setting your objectives of what you want to achieve. But right at the start of your career, there may be, if you're a little bit flexible and you're just open to different opportunities, that is probably the best way to be, to actually getting your foot in the door somewhere, to then maybe become a bit more of a subject matter expert as your career goes on. So, it's one of those things. If you're looking for something very precise, sometimes you may miss out a very good opportunity that was coming your way. So just be a bit flexible. Have it in your head like a path that you want to go on. But don't to omit opportunities necessarily out of hand if they don't be exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we see a lot, isn't it, Jack? And Like people start in one area and then they move over to another, and it's just about having that first foot in the door at these businesses. And I guess if I were to recap in terms of like the whole sort of thing that we're looking at the moment and the way the industry feels, is that being individual is cool. Being individual is now something that people should be proud of. People should be pushing forward. Your personality, whatever your personality is, whether you're a quiet person, loud person, whether you whether you love football, whether you hate football, it just doesn't matter. It's about you as an individual and what's your story. And you really need to be kind of putting this across and embracing it and realizing that the only way that you can really ever truly exceed is if you're properly inspired. And you can be inspired by the space industry, but we really recommend that you start your first role here with your personality in mind, and where you're truly embracing who you really are. And that's something that businesses are really, really, really looking for at the moment. So you can connect with us through different areas: Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We're here. We're more than happy to help whenever we can. In terms of the day-to-day of the business, like we say, it's mainly placing kind of senior engineers. However, as was alluded to by Jack, in the process at the moment is a platform that we're building for students, which is going to be pretty amazing, and it's going to hopefully connect everything together. So please do keep an eye out for that. So yeah, we're going to hand over for a Q&A. There's some questions that you guys would like to ask. We'd be more than happy to help. So I think it's questions in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of them actually. So first of all, I would like to thank you really for your exposition, because it was absolutely amazing to hear you talking about that. It's clear that you are extremely passionate about what you're doing, and I believe that this is inspiring for a lot of us. And I would like, before going to the question in the chat, I will start with a question that I have that is strictly linked to the last thing you said. And it is, when you try to get a job somewhere, you usually may find a couple of alternatives that are turning out quite positive. For example, company A seems like actually interested in me, and maybe company B as well. In this case, when I may have a couple of chances, should I just concentrate on one of them, or should I just wait for the one that I believe will be better? So take the opportunity, or wait for the opportunity you like the most when you have a couple of them. What do you suggest?
Ooh, that's a very good question.
Thank you.
When we're placing contractors, for example, so these are people that do like a project at a time, we have a saying basically, and that saying is pretty much alluding to you should just take the first opportunity that comes along. It's a difficult question to answer because it obviously depends on your circumstances. If you really, really need a job, and obviously if you get an offer, you should take it. However, if you're in a situation where you can be a bit more flexible, then I would really go with the one that feels right for you. But on the same note, do you know what? Like a lot of what people need is just a chance to prove themselves, and that's how I was when I was a student. I just felt like I had a lot to offer, and I didn't feel like enough people understood that. And for me, it was about having that first opportunity in a business to go in and be like, right, this is me. Here's what I can do. So in that vein, it doesn't, if you're lucky enough to have two offers, then take the best one. However, a lot of it is just for your first job, just take the opportunity and go in and just own it and just make it your own. That would be my advice. What's your thoughts on that, Jack?
I think like Tom said, if you're lucky enough to find yourself in a position where you've got multiple opportunities, I think again transparency and honesty with the companies that you're connected with is paramount. It's really important. If there's one which you feel is if one's moving quicker, but your preferred option is maybe moving a bit slower, just be honest with them and just say, look, I'm really passionate about joining your business, but I do have to make a decision. I'm looking to start a new role. So if you communicate in the right way, you're transparent, you're honest with the companies, you may actually be able to manipulate the process and get it to speed up a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So just that as well. And again, it just shows that you're commercially minded, shows that you communicate in the right way rather than maybe just holding back. And if you're not asked that question, you may end up actually missing out on the one you really want. So again, good communication skills, being honest and transparent at the interviews.
Yeah, don't be scared.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we can move to the next question, and this comes from Logan, and he is asking, how much should a Master of Science engineers expect as a starting salary coming out of uni here? I believe that with here he's talking about England. I don't know, because in the first question, I believe, in the next question, because there are a couple of questions from him, and he was talking about Harwell, which if I remember is in Oxfordshire.
Oh, yeah.
And so I believe that with here he may be talking about England. So
I think this is a question. So honestly speaking, this might be a bit kind of controversial. I would pretty much forget about the salary for the first position, and I would go with the opportunity that gives you the ability to grow as much as an individual. So the reason why I'm saying this, there might be one opportunity that's paying you £25,000 a year, and there might be another one that's paying you £40,000 a year. Now, 99% of people are going to go, well, that's an obvious choice. I'm going to go with the £40,000 a year. However, it's almost like for this first job, please don't let the salary be a major factor. Like, you are entering a sector that is booming. You just need to get your foot in the door somewhere and have some commercial experience, show what you can do, accelerate your career, and then trust me, you won't need to worry about money. You'll be moving up through the space ladder very, very quickly. But to answer your question, as an MSc, it depends what sort of engineer you are. But I would imagine, because a lot of this is aerospace, let's kind of consider that. Yeah, I mean, something around about the 30k mark is pretty much what I would say to expect. So £30,000 a year. But again, if you get a job that's offering you 20, but the opportunity is huge, then sometimes it's not all about the money.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Then we have another question from Ayushi. I have done projects in various domains which are not directly related. Will that affect my application since I've not extensively worked in one particular domain? This is actually an interesting question, I believe.
No, I think that shows you're flexible. You can apply yourself to different areas of expertise. I think that's a very positive thing. And again, it's about read how it comes across as well. I would see that. I would word that in a CV and explain it in an interview so it comes across in a positive way. It shows versatility, that you can throw your hand. And again, in new space, this is massive, because these new space companies are typically smaller companies, they're younger companies, and they are looking for individuals who aren't just working on something very small within the business. They need people to actually work in different areas, maybe work on one project one day, but then can lend their hand to help other teams out when needed. Because they're not a massive organization where maybe somebody just sits there all day designing a nut and bolt that goes onto a wing of an aircraft. That's all they do. These companies, the new space companies that are involved, they'll be working on the whole aircraft as opposed to that one nut and bolt. So that to me would show versatility, and that's how I present that. I'm not sure if you'd agree, Tom.
Yeah, 100%. I was thinking the exact same thing. I think let's remember the culture's changing now, and as we're trying to say in the presentation, it's about people that can pick up different tasks, people that don't get flustered. Do you know what? 1 minute you might be speaking to the CEO of the business. The next minute you're taking a phone call from a new customer. The next minute you're having to make the tea. The next minute it's you're every role in all these companies is very, very broad now. Even myself and Jack, I mean, the breadth of tasks that we're doing on a daily basis is just unbelievable. So actually the fact that you've got involved in lots of different areas, whether you meant to or not, is a very, very, very good thing. And as was just said by Jack, it's about how you present that. That is a positive. So that does need to come across.
Okay, thank you. Then we have another question from Lorcan, which is, obviously the whole world is popping off in terms of startups in space. Do you see this trend continuing?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Harwell's an interesting one. I've been aware of Harwell right from the start. There's also Harwell. There's also another small science park next to it where ABSLR, the guys that make the lithium ion, these clusters will continue. But there's also going to be a cluster that's going to be in Leicestershire. That will go crazy. There's also a good cluster in London, Edinburgh as well, where we're going to see a bit of a cluster. So these clusters will, just by proxy, because of all the growth in the space sector, continue to grow. Harwell is a great place to go. There are lots of companies there. But yeah, I don't see any chance of that slowing down anytime soon. Admittedly, we have actually seen there is an inquiry that's been launched by the UK into the space industry to try to understand how we can accelerate the growth further. And typically off the back of these inquiries, what then happens is lots of growth. And if you have a cluster like that, it's a very attractive place for companies to go. So short answer, yes.
Okay.
Also, again, going back to the opportunity piece, yes, these clusters are very good to focus on, but don't have the blinkers on and just thinking it's either Harwell or nothing. Be getting on LinkedIn, looking at companies across Europe, finding out where they're based. Just because a new space company doesn't have a base in one of these clusters across Europe or the UK, doesn't mean that they're a bad company, doesn't mean that they're not a sexy organization to join. So it's about, LinkedIn, for example, is very good. If you can find a new space company, it will also give you other new space companies, similar companies on the right-hand side that you can start following, connecting, follow all those companies, find out where they're based. But yeah, if again, it's just like not missing out on opportunities. Just because someone's not a Harwell doesn't mean that that's the end of the world. They could be based anywhere.
Okay. And then a second question that is actually related and is also about Brexit, which is also when I was undergraduate in Leicester, the starting salaries were not good, 20k per year versus 40, 50k in Germany, for example. Is that still the case in the UK after Brexit? So basically, I will actually even turn around that and is, how do you think the space sector is going to grow and be competitive with the rest of Europe after Brexit?
I think, like we just said, the fact they've launched the inquiry for me is a very good sign. I think the UK, there were a few major projects which the UK were kind of hoping for, which may not have come through, which I think which might kind of slow things down a little bit. But I think in the UK, what you have is people that have amazing ideas. The universities, the ideas that come into the table are absolutely incredible, and some of the accelerator programs are also very strong. I think what's happened in the UK space industry has gone like that, and then it's kind of gone like that, mainly because of Brexit. Things have been a bit like, how's this going to work? But from what we're seeing and from the people that we're speaking to, it's just going to accelerate straight back up again. So in terms of salaries, again, it's obviously a related question. Absolutely, there are other countries where the salaries are higher. One thing that I would say to certainly bear in mind is, what does the net pay look like? For example, what does that salary look like actually after tax? Because what you might find is that, a 20k job in the UK versus a 40, 50k job in Germany is not actually it's not as different as it looks. So I'd say just to do the research on that, first of all. But we think the UK is likely to go crazy. There's lots of talk with Australia. There's going to be basically like a link between the UK and Australia for space purposes. And you have to remember as well that the UK is very good friends with the UAE, where the space industry is going absolutely crazy, and also with the US, which we know is extremely stable. I think a small period of the UK slowing down. But what I will say is that the UK does need entrepreneurial people. I think it needs you guys that listen to this. If you are based in the UK and you have a good idea, to believe in your idea. There's lots of funding around. and to turn that idea actually into action. I think it's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. It's never been a better time to make things. So that would be my advice on it as well. Just kind of make it your own.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next question is from Lorenzo, and is: should I write my contribution to the team project inside the CV, or just prepare it to answer to the eventual question?
I would put it in, but I would do it in both, again, because there's an opportunity there in the CV just to bullet point your contribution, specifically highlight what you did that led to the success of that project. That might lead specifically to the interview. So if you don't put that in there, you may have not had that opportunity to actually give yourself the interview. So yeah, anything you can highlight in terms of how you added value, what your individual contribution was, which led to success, I would highlight that. I think that's very important.
Thank you. Then we have another question, which is, I believe, extremely on point, and is from Ricardo. If a series of interviews, two candidates are almost at the same level, what is the thing that makes you choose between them? Abroad experience, time to complete the studies, etc. I will also add grades, because this is actually something that a lot of students are concerned of. So how much does grades in university affect your possibility to find a job?
So that's the $1 million question. I think so that's a very good question there. I think it's worth thinking about the things that you can control and the things that you can influence. You could drive yourself crazy thinking, what's the other person got that I don't? All you can really focus on and control is like, what's that business looking for? When you're in the interview process, really get a good understanding and a good rapport, which is what I'm trying to talk about again. It doesn't matter what your personality is, just embrace it. Get a good rapport with that person and try to really understand what it is that they're looking for. And then it's a case of who's ultimately shown that they're the better fit for that job. Now, when you're speaking to the manager, they might say, look, I'm really looking for somebody here who's got experience abroad, let's say. So you in that situation, you think, right, okay, maybe I don't have experience abroad, but you need to think, if I don't have that, then what do I have? And it's about like who's gone further, who's tried their best to fit in with what the business is looking for. But for that, you need to be, and I totally get it, when you're interviewing in a job, you're not, it's not as simple as you're relaxed and you're clear-headed and, it's scary, isn't it? And like, it's quite difficult to stay calm and to really understand it. But, when you're looking through that job spec and when you're speaking to these people, it's a case of, who's managed to sell the pill to the man with the headache. Is the way that we say it. It's like, if they have a problem over here, you need to explain to them how you fit into that problem, and that's all that you can control really. And there's no set answer, I would say. However, as I'm sure if I pass over in a minute to Jack, he'll mention it's the same point that I keep saying. It's like what somebody contributed on an individual basis into their projects, and how adaptable is somebody and how coachable is somebody. And by coachable, I mean, how much can somebody say, look, I learn things really quickly and I embrace it. You can throw me into any situation and I'll try my best to work it out. Here's examples of where I did that. And that's the only thing I'd say at the moment is the main number one thing, really. I'm sure you probably agree, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not as simple as saying, somebody weighing up between someone who had a 2-1 or a 2-2, or someone who had, like a pass or a merit or whatever the grading structure is. It is, and we haven't touched on it that much, but most interviews these days are competency-led interviews. So they will be looking for examples of, again, like we were talking about earlier, communication, teamwork, how perhaps conflict resolution is a massive one in interviews. They'll say, right, okay, tell us about a time where maybe you've been involved in a project but you disagreed with other people that were in the project on the way forward to achieve your objectives. How did you overcome that? That is a classic interview question, which you guys will come across now. So it becomes less about who's got the 2-1 and who's got the better degree on paper, who may have taken a year of industry. If you can sit there and explain really, really well how you overcame that conflict, how you found a resolution on the way forwards, and that's how you demonstrated how you'd be able to do that moving forwards. That's the stuff they really want to see. So it's difficult because it's not as tangible as having, this is my degree on paper. That's the kind of stuff we really need to work on and really need to introduce to these interviews, because that is what will make the difference. How will that person actually operate in day-to-day life? How will that person operate in my business when we've got these issues?
Yeah. Sorry. I was going to add on to that. We've been kind of lucky enough to be privy to the way that a lot of companies actually score their interviews, and a lot of it comes down to a score. It comes down to a number, and that number is put together based on 3 core areas. So you have the IQ, which is your skills, your hard skills, as we call them, your ability to do the job. Then you have like the EQ, so the emotional intelligence. So how emotional is this person? If nobody's in the office one day and this person turns up, are they going to sit there and not know what to do, or are they just going to work it out? It's that emotional intelligence. And then the final one is the passion. And we know lots of companies, big companies, very, very sexy companies, where that's the way they score their interviews. So you need to be thinking this: IQ, EQ, passion, and how do you get that across? If we leave one thing today, that's probably something very strong for people to really, really, really think about.
Yeah, that was going to answer my second question about this matter. Then we have another question, which is from Veronica. What would be the pros and cons of this situation? Situation number 1, spend more time in student status doing internship to gain work experience, or situation 2, get the degree as soon as possible and looking for jobs having no experience. So basically experience versus get a degree fast and get into the job world.
That's a difficult question to answer. Again, all these questions are difficult to answer because it's not a finite, like every company
yes and no,
is like this answer. Yeah. It's if I think about it, so we have an intern who's working for us. She's here on a placement year, and for her it was important, and she'll openly admit she's learned so much from it. It's been absolutely invaluable, and we would like her to come and work for us afterwards. So it really does depend. I think it depends on your degree. It depends on you as a person. I would say if you can look at good internships, I would argue to go for the internships, because there might be a job there at the end of it for you. If that internship goes well, you can sort of try a different job. So I would say if you're not on a time limit, I would always look at the internships personally. But I don't want to kind of lead somebody down a path. It really depends on you as a person, and what your timescales are and what's really kind of important to you. Have you got like a different angle on that, would you say, or what's your thoughts on that, Jack?
So I think, just using my own experience, when I was a student, I wanted to get the best grade in my degree as I possibly could, but I'm probably not as academically strong as others. So I knew I had to focus all my efforts in terms of making sure I got at least a reasonable level degree and a reasonable outcome. So if I'd have started doing the jobs, I just, my personal, I kind of understand my strengths and weaknesses. And for me, I had to commit more time to the studying just to make sure I got that done. But then I backed myself to go and find a job once I'd done that. So again, it's kind of subjective, and leading into what Tom said, it's different for different people. If you feel that it would really be beneficial to you as a person and your journey that we talk about that you're going on, and ultimately when you're sitting in front of an interviewing panel to say, yes, I took a year out and worked with this organisation and this is what I brought to the table, then go and do it. Again, have the confidence and believe in what you're doing. But if there's nothing wrong with going, right, I'm going to hammer out my studies, get it done to a high standard, and then I'm going to hit it. It's subjective. But and again, you justify that in an interview by saying, these are the reasons why I did that. This is what, and again, people want to know about you and why you've done certain things. And again, it just comes back to you as an individual, and that's part of your own journey. So it's how you sell it at the end of the day.
So
yeah.
Be assertive with what you did. We can say that.
Yeah. I'd say that. But I think to kind of put your mind at rest. I don't think there's a bias for employers whether somebody's just finished their degree or if somebody's done internships. I don't think it's like they wouldn't take one person over the other if they were even candidates. I think it's more a bit again about what's your story, what's your passion, why are you there, why is it important to you? That's what makes the difference. So yeah, I consider you as a person. Also, the internship's good. Don't take an internship for the sake of it. If it's like completely irrelevant, but you feel you should do it, then don't. Like it needs to be worthwhile for you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we have Davide, which is asking, what about certification outside the university? I mean, are they useful? And he's actually pointing out here what he's talking about. For example, I'm a space student, but I like programming, experimenting with Arduino. Could a certificate about this be worth to be written in the CV?
Yeah.
I mean, I would buy a Raspberry Pi yourself, and I would start to program, and I would start to make, kind of make things yourself. I think it's never been cooler to make stuff. It's a very hot thing at the moment. So I think, yes, certification is good, maybe online, but actually what we're seeing now is like real world experience might be better. So rather than looking for somebody else who's written a course for you to do, I would do that as well. Like, I would say don't do it, but if you can just create your own project and you're in your garage and you start to make something, that for me shows initiative, it shows passion, it shows drive. If you look at the IQ, the EQ, and the passion, that's all three. I would do it yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we have Veronica again, who is asking, how is there in Panorama for a person who doesn't have a EU citizenship and aims to enter the space sector?
Again, I think this is a question that came up on a previous event we did as well. In terms, I think it is worthwhile if you're based in a certain country, understanding what the visa requirements are and what the logistics are for working in certain countries. Say, for example, you really want to go and work in the US and you're from a certain country. Find out what that journey looks like to actually get there and what it actually means. Would you need support from the hiring company? Is it even possible that they can hire you without experience in a certain country? So again, it's like if you have got a passion to go and work in a particular country, that's something you're going to have to research and understand. And unfortunately, sometimes it may be a bit of a blocker, and it may not open itself as an opportunity until later in your career when you have more experience. But so that's it's hard to say. This is because everyone's different. Everyone's from a different country. So just understanding that you may have to do some research, understanding what the logistics are to actually end up in where you want to end up.
I completely agree with you on that. I would say, however, that it's not an issue. It's nowhere near as hard as it used to be. Into Germany, we place a lot of people that require visas. Space there is obviously very strong. In the UK, it can be quite straightforward depending on your skill set. But there's different parts of the world now. The space sector is opening up globally, and places like the UAE is a good place where the visa process is slightly more straightforward. There's less paperwork, essentially, and there's lots of opportunity. So to answer that question, I would say think about working anywhere in the world rather than in like a specific country. Just think on a global basis now.
Okay, thank you. That is clear. Then we have another question from Nicola. How much abroad experience can be important in building your profile?
I guess the question there is how important is it to have experience abroad? Again, it depends if it's important to you. This is the thing. If you want to go abroad for personal reasons, so you say, look, I just really want to go to this particular place, and then you do it. Again, let's think about IQ, EQ, and passion. That's showing a lot of passion there. That's showing that actually you're like, I set myself a goal. I wanted to go to this country, and I did it, and it was worthwhile. Now that's powerful. Just going abroad, for the sake of it, because you feel like you should, but actually it's not something you're passionate about. I wouldn't say that would give you any better or worse chance of securing a job personally. Again, it's about is it something that you're passionate about, and is there a real reason for it? If you are passionate about it, then definitely do it, because it's useful to get different cultures, different experiences, to try different languages. And you have to think that by doing it, even if it doesn't make a difference whether you get the job or not, it might help to expand you as a person, which again, in terms of your story and why you versus, you know, the other thousands of people that might be looking for work at that one time, you know, it's about sort of building and creating your story.
Perfect. Thank you. Then we have another question. We really are having a lot of questions, which I believe means that the students are really, really touched by your work. So you would be really proud of that. Veronica again is asking, you could say any list of softwares that are particularly interesting to learn for the space sector, being a Master of Science space engineer?
Yeah. There's a few red hot ones at the moment. Python is something. My brother, do you know what, when I first started working in recruitment about 11 years ago, I could kind of see Python, and it started mainly with Google, who were using Python Django, I think. So Python, they're using the library. And I said to my brother, I was like, you need to become a software engineer. You need to learn Python. Anyway, he didn't do it. And now he's really annoyed because if he did, you know, but I would say Python is definitely a very, very, very good language to use. And the reason for that is that it's obviously a scripting language. It can interface with various different softwares, but upstream and downstream, we're seeing a lot of Python. A lot of the artificial intelligence libraries are built on Python libraries. Equally, when you're testing a spacecraft, a lot of the tests are written in Python. So I would say that that's something that's very, very, very hot at the moment. And I would say as well, in terms of where there's a vacuum or there's skills missing at the moment, C++ application engineers are really hard to find. Really, really, really hard to find. So if you're interested in learning C++ and becoming a C++ application software engineer, that would be a good idea, definitely. What's your thoughts on that as well, Jack? Any other softwares that you see that are
Yeah, in upstream, people go back to LabVIEW sometimes for testing, but I think that's Tom's area of expertise. I think what he's touched on there is definitely what the clients ask for. So yeah, I don't think anything else specific. Again, I wouldn't be put off by worrying too much about, you know, specific. If it's great, if you've got some one which opens up more opportunities for you because it's in more general use, then fine. But again, having exposure to different languages is not a bad thing, because again, it's almost subjective which route a company goes down. Similarly with a CAD package, you know, that's why there's multiple different CAD packages, and it's kind of up to the personal choice of whoever's running that company to decide what CAD package they use. So it's not, you know, yes, try and pick up the ones which are hot and in the market and try and get exposure, but don't think it'll be detrimental to you if you've maybe studied different codes in languages which, you know, or just different ones. I think it still adds to your profile, still adds to your versatility that you've had exposure to these things.
Thank you. Then we have someone from Toronto. So here from Toronto, Canada. Really love the passion from you guys. Would you guys know if Canadians are applicable for any UK space sector internship?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
We're going through a period of change, obviously, in the UK at the moment, and what is looking more likely now is bringing in people. Obviously, there was the freedom of movement with Europe, and people could quite easily come from Europe into the UK previously. The UK government is kind of making a play to say they're going to open it up for further apart now. So it's going to be more like an Australian style point system is probably where we're headed. You know, that's not locked in at the moment. It's still very early days, but the UK government has said that we are now going to be open to more countries and given opportunity wider than it was just more the European Union previously. So again, probably read into the logistics that's specific in terms of if you're really keen to come to the UK, start looking at the embassy, start looking at, like, do companies sponsor? Some companies will openly sponsor you from regardless of where your background, if you're the right individual. So that's something else to, you know, that you may have to do some further personal research on.
Yeah,
I remember that I was actually looking for that, and I remember this part of the sponsor company that can actually really, really help you get an internship or even a job in the UK. This is really a great opportunity. We have another question, which is, what languages, apart from English, would be interesting to be skilled in the space sector?
maybe Chinese. I don't. Well, I don't know. I think the international language of space is definitely English. No, I mean it really is 99.9% English. I think there are maybe in France it would be good to speak French.
Yeah, but that's because they're French.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But apart from that, I would say, and I hate saying this because we're from England, and it may sound, it doesn't come across in the wrong way, but I would say to really focus on, making the English as good as possible would be a good idea. And it actually makes me feel very uncomfortable saying it. I promise it does. But every company we work with across the globe, the language has actually been that. But I wasn't joking when I said China, because the Chinese, their space industry is going crazy. They've obviously just launched their own international, well, not international, their own space station. So that would be the only one I think where it's kind of potentially a different language. But apart from that, it's pretty much English. And there aren't necessarily, for example, more French leaders than there are people from Germany or from Italy. It's fairly even. But yeah, everybody speaks English.
Of course. And may I ask you a comment about Russian, maybe? Because I can associate that with the space sector as well. And so I would like to know your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Russia and China, it's the same sort of theory. I mean, we'll put our hands up. We don't know much about their space sectors at all. We're looking a lot at Japan, which has a fairly booming space sector. But yeah, I think that would be up to you. We couldn't necessarily advise on that. It's not something that we know too much about, unfortunately.
Okay, we have the last two questions. So first is from Sophia. Do you have any advice for high school students? How can they get practically involved in this field and be prepared for the future?
I think keeping an eye out for projects, joining organisations where which would maybe allow you to work in teams with people to come up with solutions. It's that extracurricular activity, if you can dig it out, but then also, look to see if there's opportunities with companies directly, maybe to do like a couple of months here, a couple of months there, almost like work experience, maybe a step below internships. Again, a company may be responsive to you if you say, look, during the summer, I'd like to spend 2 or 3 months working with you guys if you've got anything available at all. Again, it's that networking piece. It's never been easier to go and approach a company directly than it has now. LinkedIn's very good for that. So, just be brave, just be confident and go out and see how you can get involved directly with the companies themselves. But yeah, in terms of joining, about how this has come about today with PoliSpace, join organizations like you guys, which maybe give the opportunity to say that this project is happening. You can apply to this, you can get involved in that. It's about being proactive with it.
Yeah, just one thing to add to that. I think as well, if you have a look on LinkedIn, or if you're having a look around for people in the space industry that actually inspire you, and look, if you're in high school, then there's plenty of time, and I would say find somebody that inspires you and see whether they might be interested in mentoring you, or whether they might be interested in kind of sharing some of their tips and what they're doing. There was myself and one of the other guys, we were on a podcast the other night, and it's with a guy who's 20 years old, and when he was 16 he was like, that's it, I'm just going to go to the US to practice English. And then he's developed a podcast where he basically interviews quite big individuals, and the whole idea for him is to learn basically, and to pick up new ideas. So that's an idea of what we just mentioned there, but somebody actually doing it in practice. So yeah, I'd just be reaching out to people that might inspire you, start a conversation, see whether they might be interested in mentoring you, see if they're interested to give you advice. That's where I'd start with it, and to start. I wish that when I was in high school I had that brain. Unfortunately, I was nowhere near that organised. But just try to find people that inspire you and see if you can learn from them.
Okay, thank you. And then we have another one interesting about the CV, which is from Katya. Do you think it is always useful to send a cover letter together with the CV, or it is an outdated practice?
I think that if you want to put something extra added to it, which again will get across your passion for it, then it's not a bad thing. You can do that. I think what is very useful is that if you have a portfolio or other evidence which backs up anything that's specific to that job opportunity. So, for example, if it is a systems engineering role and the company specifically works on spacecrafts, it's mechanical focus, for example, anything you've done to back up your mechanical experience and capability in the form of maybe CAD designs in a portfolio or anything like that, then that is something that would really bolster your CV, because it's evidential that you've got extra stuff which you can't just put in CV, because CV is just text. So again, and then maybe even software, like if you're doing something which is more software focused, again, you can put in there examples of where you've worked on software, develop applications or programs in a portfolio. So yeah, I mean, a cover letter, if you want to get across more, why specifically as well that you're going for that particular role, is a good opportunity to explain why and why you're passionate about it. But then the other stuff is case studies, portfolio, anything you can attach. Like, companies do love that when you can provide extra information to show what you've done.
Okay, thank you. We have the last two questions, after which we have to stop because we almost run out of time. And this one is from Ludovica. Next year, I will take the bachelor degree in automation engineering. Do you suggest me to start a Master of Science in space engineering, or I can also be prepared if I continue with automation?
Good question. Depends on the modules available within space engineering. Can you lead more towards automation? It also depends. It's a shame that we can't ask the question back. Automation engineering, what specifically does that entail? Are we looking at things like additive manufacturing, or are we looking more kind of automation in terms of software? But either way, you're in a very relevant area. I love space personally, so I would say do the Space Masters, because it's just such a passionate and enjoyable area. But I would have a look within the Space Masters to see if you can look at relevant modules for automation to complement your automation experience and passion. That's what I would do personally. But if not, there's going to be plenty of space for automation in different shapes and sizes. So if you don't look at the space degree and you want to carry on and you're passionate about it, again, you've just got to think about those three things: IQ, EQ, passion. If you're passionate, then follow it and just tell the story, basically. What's your thoughts, Jack?
Yeah, I think if you've got the automation piece there already, if you're desperate to get into the space sector and the space sector is the one for you, then go down the space engineering route. As I said, as Tom said, the space piece will complement your automation background and maybe give you a foothold to get into a space company. However, it's not going to stop you getting a job in the space industry if you've done an automation masters, because it's still there. And it depends how specifically you want to work in the space industry. There may be opportunities for you in the future in, say, autonomous vehicles. So perhaps you'd look at opportunities outside of space. But if space is your passion, the space engineering would make sense, because you've already got the automation knowledge.
Okay, perfect. Then last question from Luigi. Would you advise bachelor students to already look for internship despite the little technical knowledge?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. I think again, provided it's interesting, provided you look at the internship and you go, oh yeah, that's something that I'm really interested in. I would, it's never worth doing anything for the sake of it, or because you feel that you should. You should do it because you believe in what it is. So I would say have a look around. Find something that you think is potentially relevant to your degree and something that you might want to pursue either in a master's, or if you're not going to be doing a master's, for what you might want to do in your career, and to start to build up. I see an internship as basically your portfolio at this stage. That's your experience. That's what you can show that you did, and it was you that found it. So I would say it's definitely not too early, no.
Sooner the better as well. There are ultimately a finite amount of internships. There will be a certain number out there. So the sooner the better, the earlier you can start networking, putting yourself out there, building your profile, connecting with people and looking at that, the better. And people, and again, it's a case of these companies will know if someone's applying for an internship, they won't have that much experience. That's why it's an internship. So don't be put off by that in any way.
Sure. Perfect. Well, I believe that we are come to an end now. So I want to say really thank you to you, Tom and Jack, for this opportunity you gave us. I believe I can talk on behalf of the whole PoliSpace and all the guys who follow us this afternoon. I believe you really, really managed to inspire them and to make them think and in the future work with their skills and with their CV and resources. I really believe that this webinar is one of the most important and interesting webinars we ever did because of how practical and how important it is for our future. Because we don't usually tend to think about it, but this is basically even more important than your university period by itself, because we can learn from this evening. We learn how to actually relate to a company, how to get us, how to help them to acknowledge our success and our possibility to work with them and to build something with them and for them. So really, really thank you on behalf of everyone. This was an absolutely staggering opportunity for all of us. And thank you again for the PDF you shared with us. It will be, of course, of great usefulness for everyone.
Of course, and thank you very, very much for having us. We're always more than happy to help, and if there's any topics that you might want to cover in the future, we're here. We're happy to help. We're happy to put something together for you guys. So yeah, please just reach out, and like I say, thank you for having us.
Yeah, feel free to. We've seen that quite a lot of people have joined onto the website as well from our side. So feel free, anybody who hasn't done that, you can go onto our website, join as a student, and yeah, we'll stay in touch for any other events moving forwards.
Thank you very much. I can show you if you want a couple of comments. I just want to say thanks to you. But yes, basically everyone was absolutely amazed by this webinar. So thank you again. And I believe that is everything for this evening. So see you next time. And thank you again for Tom and Jack from EVONA. Good evening.
Bye-bye. Cheers, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.
You have to know that things like this start just from one thing, which is a dream. My dream was that all students could be able to develop projects in our university. Here we want to establish something which is way bigger. I would say a company, more or less. But for doing this, we need all of you.